Hello and welcome to another video tutorial brought to you by noxtt.com, enabling organizations through technology. In today's tutorial, we're going to deploy a static website on an Amazon AWS S3 bucket. S3 is Amazon's object storage. However, we're going to deploy a website on this object storage, and because it's S3, it's object storage, it's not a server, it's not Apache, Nginx, IIS. It can be considered as serverless infrastructure because there's no server here. So this deployment can be looked at or categorized as AWS administration. So let's get into it. I'm just going to quickly speed through this overview. So we're going to deploy a static website on an AWS S3 bucket, which means we're going to configure the bucket to host a static website, and then we're going to point this domain name to that S3 bucket. So when you type in this domain name, www.testec2.com, the static website that's hosted on the S3 bucket will resolve. It is possible also to add SSL and create an SSL certificate, again using Amazon. Even though the domain is not hosted on Amazon on Route 53, it's hosted on, with GoDaddy or any other third-party vendor, you can still create an SSL certificate for it. But we won't be doing that today. Today in this tutorial, we're just deploying this site, and we're going to create two CNAME records so that the domain name will resolve to the website. Of course, the domain name, for this to happen, the domain name is going to point to the default endpoint for the S3 bucket, and we'll see what that is about. So let's get into it. We're just going to sign in, create our bucket using this domain name. You can copy this one time. We're going to remove all the block public access because we want the site to be publicly available. Again, configure the S3 bucket for website hosting. We're going to set our default files. Index.html is the default file, so you just type up the domain name. It serves up index.html, and if there are any errors, it's going to serve up error.html. So just out of curiosity, this is our default site. It's just a pretty basic site that was gotten from a free template off the internet, and we're going to deploy it in our S3 bucket. So we can go to services, and S3 is under the storage section. So we hit create bucket, and the name must be the same name as your domain name. We also remove, the region doesn't matter for the demonstration. We also remove block all public access, and we have to acknowledge that we did that. And that's it for this page. It's pretty quick. So the bucket is created, but what we have to do now is ensure that it is configured for static website hosting. And we're going to do that right here in the properties tab. You go into the bucket. That was kind of quick. We just created this bucket, remove public access, block public access, that is, so objects can be public. We go back in, we go to the properties tab. We're going to go all the way down to the bottom, and we're going to hit edit. We're going to enable static website hosting, and we're going to type up our default document. HTML, error.html, and index.html. We're going to save those changes. Now for this S3 bucket to serve website pages, we have to create a bucket policy, and that's going to be in the permissions. It's going to be just under the block public access. And this is the bucket policy right here. You can just type this out and copy and paste as is. The only difference will be the ARN name, or the resource, the value for the resource. That's going to be unique for everyone. So we're going to paste that inside here. And this is our ARN. So this is the ARN I'm going to use. Be careful not to override the double quotes and the backslash. And the star must also remain. So that's it right there. Save. Now there are two ways right now to access the website. You can go straight to the default URL assigned by Amazon, which is going to be at the bottom, I believe, of the properties tab. This is it. So if we click this, this is the domain name that Amazon created on the fly. Hasn't been resolved as yet. It's probably still taking some time. Let's go back. Let's see if our index.html. Oh, we haven't even uploaded our site. Oh, I forgot about that. So we just created the bucket. That is the URL, however, but we haven't created our site. Oh, let's do that. I completely forgot that. So let's add our files. I was just speeding ahead there a way too bit. So this is our index and products. Then we're going to add the error and about. Now we're going to add our images folder. And that should be it. So that is our site. And we hit upload. Now, as I mentioned before, there would be two ways to access the site. You can use the default URL assigned by AWS in the properties tab. But if you go into the actual index.html file, that has an HTTPS link. But that link will take you straight to the index as opposed to the domain. And you will see what I mean by that. So now when we go into the properties and we go all the way down, now when we hit this link, the site is going to come up. So what I was referring to earlier with the index.html, because you would see that this is HTTP, it's not HTTPS. However, if we go all the way up and we go into index.html, there's a link here that's HTTPS. So this link would have SSL, but it must always have this index.html. And as you can see, the site resolves. Okay, that's great. So how do we point Test Ec2 to this bucket? Well, we have to use our default URL, the one without the SSL. So that would be the one at the bottom of the properties tab. We're going to use this. So let's just copy it. We're going to use this. We're going to point this to, or rather the domain is going to be pointed to this. So let's head into our domain. I'm just going to pause the video to pull up those configurations. And we're back. So as previously mentioned, you have to remove all the CNAME records for your domain, the domain you're going to use. All the CNAME records must be removed for the domain. And now we're going to add 2 new CNAME records. So as you see, now it's time to point your registered domain to your S3 bucket. Ensure your domain is set to type URL standard. This doesn't apply for everyone. My particular hosting provider, I have to set this. Note that this may not be necessary. Yeah. Remove all previous CNAME records if they exist and create new ones. The 2 CNAME records will be www and start. This will ensure that the site will render using testec2.com. It will not render with this. Another configuration has to be done for that to work out. We're going to keep it simple. And then we can use the dig command to ensure that the CNAME records that were just created were correct. There's a time lapse. When you create the CNAME records, even though the CNAME records may have been created correctly, sometimes there's a time lapse. Some people say 1 hour, some people say 4 hours, some people say half an hour, some people say 45 minutes. But you can't wait that long to know if you made a mistake. So you can run the dig command to ensure that it was done you enter the CNAME record in the DNS correctly. It will be dig plus short, and you enter testec2.com or www.testec2.com in this case. And what should be output is the web address automatically assigned to the bucket by AWS. So when we run that dig command, we're supposed to get this back. But right now we're going to create our CNAME record. So as I said before, the CNAME records, this is going to be www. It's going to be a CNAME record, and we're going to paste in everything except the HTTP, of course. So we can take that for the next record. So this is what we're pasting in. As you can see, it's everything except the HTTP://. So this is the first CNAME record. We're going to put the time to live or TTL for 1 hour, and we're going to add this. I'm just going to pause the video and pull up the other empty window to create the second record with the star. So here we are, and just as before, we are going to create the second CNAME record. No HTTP, time to live, 1 hour, and that should be it. So I'm just going to pause this to create it, log out of my hosting, and then we'll get straight into the terminal to test our dig. Okay, so we're back, and what we just did, we created our 2 CNAME records for testec2.com. We specified or configured that those 2 records are going to point to this URL, just the www part. And now we're going to test that what we did was correct. So we run a dig plus short, and then we say www.testec2.com. And when we hit enter, this URL is supposed to come back. So the CloudFront is coming back. This is when I created an SSL certificate, but we're not using SSL, and I removed the those certificates. We probably just need to give it a bit of time, but we can test it out and see if it's resolving. So let's just try it out. And this is going to be HTTP testec2.com. And there we go. And it's HTTP, not HTTPS. So things have worked out. As you can see, it's pointed. Our testec2, www.testec2.com domain is pointing to our S3 bucket website. Let's just check it again and see if it resolves now. testec2.com, dig short. It's still resolving to that certificate. It's probably taken a while to remove itself from DNS propagation, but that doesn't change anything. We have created our S3 bucket. Our site resolves. We then pointed our domain to our S3 bucket. I'm just going to pause the video and give it a little time to see if the DNS will resolve. Okay, we're back. Just about 4 minutes or 2 minutes, not much at all, for the propagation to take effect. So if we run that dig command now, still getting back the CloudFront, but I can run another command. So I can run dig testec2.com, and this time I'm going to hit any. And if we look at these records, well, you're going to see that testec2.com, the CNAME, this is the CNAME record for it right here. And that CNAME record resolves to our Amazon, the name of our S3 bucket. So I can actually copy and paste this back into a new tab, and it comes up right here. So that's a good test you can do. So the original command I had was dig short. But if for some reason the dig short, if you're in my case, you just created an SSL certificate, you removed it, but removing it, you didn't give much time before you recreated that bucket, you can do a dig, the domain name, and any in caps. And you should see your S3 bucket result. See, so the CNAME, I guess the unpropagation or repropagation is taking some time, because before it resolved to the CNAME resolved to the S3 bucket, but now it's gone back to the cloudfront.net. This is the domain for the SSL. But no worries, it's all good. At least you have two commands you can use to test. So you can use the dig plus short testec2.com, or you can use the any. Okay, so you see, this is how things are dynamic. You just give it some time. So now it's resolving there. This is the output I expected for originally when I first entered the command. But as I said before, I had created an SSL certificate and just removed it. It's probably still taking effect. But that brings us to the end of the tutorial. So we were able to achieve what we set out to do, which is we created an S3 bucket, we uploaded our static website to it, we enabled the S3 bucket or configured the S3 bucket for static website hosting. We then took our domain name and pointed it to the assigned URL, the default URL created by AWS, to locate the bucket on the web, and our domain propagated quite quickly and we were able to view the website. So that brings us to the end of this tutorial. I hope you found it informative. I'd like to thank you for viewing.